So my name is Matt. I'm from Endless Energy, which is based in Marlborough, Massachusetts.
Perfect. And how long have you been in the HVAC business?
Sure. So Endless Energy has been around for about 40 years in some capacity. It has a little bit of a weird history. It started as a water treatment company out of Pennsylvania. The gentleman who owned it, his two sons came to work for him, and it morphed into a solar company. And then one of those brothers decided to move to Massachusetts, which is where we're located now. So the company kind of split at that point. Started in Massachusetts about 15, 16 years ago as a solar company. And the son who was running it thought, wouldn't it be a great idea to have add ons like mini splits? And so HVAC started to become part of the picture. I came into the company about 4 years ago, ended up buying that brother out, and the company formally split, but the company morphed over the time. And so we no longer do solar. We do a lot of HVAC, we do plumbing, we do electrical, but solar is not part of the game. And we work with some solar partners, but we ourselves actually don't do that. And so, we've been in Massachusetts about 15, 16 years. We've been doing HVAC for about 13 years as part of that. And so it's been a fun journey for my 4 years as part of that.
That's awesome. And what background do you have before coming into Endless Energy?
Yeah, so I have an unusual background. I am not somebody that you would expect to find at a home services company. I have a background that's been in a lot of different industries: technology, entertainment, media, even the conventions world. But kind of the through line is that in all of those instances, I've come into a company or an organization and helped them kind of grow from one product into multiple other products, which is what the intent was here. I saw a huge opportunity because Endless Energy's specialty when I came in was air source heat pumps, and it still is air source heat pumps. And I saw what the market in Massachusetts was going to do for air source heat pumps, and saw, okay, well, we can do that, focus here, but also it helps us add this and this and this and this, and you can kind of look at the whole ecosystem. And so that's what we've been doing for about 4 years, and it's been a fun adventure. But I'm not somebody that you would typically expect to see running an HVAC company. But the thing that's kind of cool about it is after 4 years, I understand about 90% of what's going on. I can even go out there, and the service guys have joked that I went out to a service call because it was pretty close to my house, and I was actually able to troubleshoot something in a way that they're like, wow, you actually could be on the service team. And so you pick up things pretty quickly in this world, is what I found.
That's awesome. Maybe you pick things up quickly. I don't know about everyone, but um, one question I have for you to just like think about like you came into this industry and you were like, there are opportunities here to build something really amazing. What were some of the opportunities that you saw coming from all these other industries and bringing that experience into HVAC?
Yeah, I think that what I saw is there's a shift towards something that I'll call more sustainable or eco-friendly, and also more technology driven. And so when you're thinking about air source heat pumps, you're talking about something that is fully modulating, so something that's inverter driven. And so it's actually a fairly smart system, relatively speaking. And so if you look at the trajectory of kind of industries in general, it always advances towards something that's more technologically advanced. And so if you look at that, it's like, okay, this is going to explode. It's going to be a huge thing. Plus, it saves people money. It's more efficient for the environment. It's an easier installation in some cases. And so you look at all of that holistically, and it was like, here, this is a real opportunity to do that. Then you do that, and you start looking at, okay, well, if we're in somebody's home, what are the other things that we can look at in terms of helping them with energy savings? And so for us, for example, we're also a mass save home performance company, a contractor, and we help people with mass save energy audits. We install EV chargers. We're looking at more efficient toilets and sinks and stuff like that through our plumbing department. And so you can kind of start to chip away at, like, what is somebody doing in their home and how is it efficient, whether they are focused on trying to save energy for environmental reasons, or if they're trying to save energy and resources more from a cost saving perspective. There are ways that you can do that, and it's that was what was kind of interesting, and you could see, like, this is the direction that we're going in, and there's a great opportunity here with that.
That's awesome, and resonates a lot with why we started Conduit. Was we saw an opportunity where it can be beneficial to a business, the business that's installing these, but it can also be beneficial to a homeowner. It's in many markets, Massachusetts is the unique one where there are great incentives to support the homeowner cost. In many markets, it's difficult to the cost of efficiency can be so high. But what I love about some of the Northeast markets is there's interventions and there's incentives for the homeowner to try and take advantage of them, which creates some costs for the HVAC business, but is really amazing the impact that the HVAC business is then having on broader home efficiency, which I think is really cool. Um, so you are doing a lot inside the home. There's a lot of opportunity in there. And so with that, one thing I've observed is that you've thought a lot about your processes. Um, and I think that's where your background from other industries has also probably served you very well. I'm curious today, as you think about like the life cycle of a customer, especially on the HVAC or energy auditing side, what like what technologies and tools do you use today to deliver a great customer experience?
So a great customer experience is really it really focuses around communication and making something really clear to the homeowner. And so when we're thinking about technology, what we're thinking about first and foremost is how does this help us tell our story more efficiently and more clearly? And so if you're looking at that, we're looking at something like Conduit, for example, which is telling us, helping us tell the homeowner, like, okay, here's your home. And then you're visualizing it saying, okay, this is your home, this is what your heat load or your cooling load looks like. Here are your rooms, and you're breaking it down that way. And so, technology like that, we use a platform called OnCall Air for quoting because it's very visual. It shows the homeowner what does the system look like. They can read about it. They can even click links that go to the manufacturer site to learn more information about it. We use technology like Chirrp for automation, and so that's for outreach. Like, how can we create campaigns so when somebody signs a contract, they're getting an outreach by text, by email that outlines, okay, awesome, thank you for being part of the Endless Energy family. Here's what happens next. So that there's not a gap in communication. It removes some of that human error and it becomes crystal clear and really fast. And that is providing, in my mind, that's providing kind of the top customer service level is being kind of there communicating quickly, but also clearly in a way that they really can digest it and understand and not feel like you're talking a lot of jargon to them or, doing something. That my favorite stories when I hear them out and about with different contractors, like, oh, I met with a contractor and, he held up his thumb and said, okay, you need 2 tons. It's like that is not doing justice for that homeowner. And meanwhile, you can have something that very clearly is laying out, okay, here's the manual J. So this is sizing your house and saying this is what you need and showing you like that. And with something like Conduit, you can even visualize like, okay, here's what this is going to look like in your house, which really lets that homeowner have a sense of like, okay, what is this going to be? Is this something I really want to do? And especially if you're talking about ductless, that's something where people feel very strongly one way or the other about, and that's we do both ductless and ducted. And some people like ductless, great. It's efficient, it's fast. That's what I want. Some people, you show them a mock-up of that on the wall. Absolutely not. I do not want this in my house. Okay, fine. Let's go a ducted route and let's come up with a solution for you that works better for your needs. But being able to visualize that helps prevent hiccups down the line that you could run into with a homeowner.
It's crazy. I think somebody like ran an experiment where they like didn't, they didn't say anything. And like 9 times out of 10, nobody even notices it, the ductless solution on the wall. But it's that like one time out of 10 that is so scarring that like you do not want to not show what that's going to look like to the homeowner. Like they need to confirm that they're okay with it because nothing is
Absolutely.
worse than showing it.
There's nothing worse than a spouse. We do run into this from time to time where one of them just doesn't care at all, and the other cares so passionately. It's like, you know what? We're going to do this. We're going to give you a mock-up. I want you to look at, discuss it with each other, and if this is what you guys are about, let's do it. It's a great solution for you. If you have any hesitations, let's look at other options and go through what we have for you.
Yes. I think about this like my husband bought a throw blanket like I don't know, a year ago. And I was like, that is so ugly. Like every home purchase like must be run by me. Like it just has to be. And I can only imagine with something far more significant than a $30 blanket. Awesome. Well, I'm curious. Tell me a little bit more about like a typical new install that you're running for a customer, and like what does that process look like for your team? Like, a lot of folks I would imagine are touching that job, and how do you make it all come together so seamlessly?
So, one of the things that we really promote about us to homeowners is that they can have a holistic experience with us, and part of that is because our company is in so many different areas. So, in Massachusetts, as you alluded to, there are a lot of incentives. With those incentives, there are a lot of extra steps that have to happen, and so the more of that we can control and kind of steer internally, the better experience that is for the customer. So. Customers generally come to us in one of two ways. One of which is they say, I want a new system or go through service and realize they need a new system. The other of which is they go through a mass safe home energy assessment and somebody recommends as part of that, hey, you might want to consider a new HVAC system, heat pump, something like that. Either way, they have a consultation with, we call them account managers, but other companies might call them comfort advisors. There are a lot of different terms you see in the industry, but it's essentially somebody who has been trained to go to somebody's house and to take measurements and to ultimately work with that homeowner to understand their needs, what the home can support, what the home needs in terms of heating and cooling loads, and ultimately designs options for that homeowner. We are very big on options. We don't like to be prescriptive and say, this is what it must be. We're very big on saying, okay, here's this path. Here are the pros and cons. Here's this path. Here are the pros and cons. And here's this path. Here are the pros and cons. And letting the homeowner decide or discuss and kind of weigh all of that. Once they've decided that, then it goes to either a mass safe home energy assessment, which they might have already had or might not have had. We can do that internally because it's our team, so that's an easy handoff to say, okay, we're going to have our next team come out. Mass safe energy assessment, they're checking mostly the insulation, but essentially the weatherization of the home, which is so important, particularly in New England with these heat pumps, because you don't want to put a heat pump in if you've got no insulation in your attic, for example. Like that heat is just going to go up and out, and you're going to spend a fortune heating your home. So you don't want to do that. And our team can help you with that, and through the program, give a very generous incentive towards the insulation as well. But that gets you ready for even more incentives on the heat pump side. So the state has a 0% loan on heat pumps. That's a 5-year on average loan. And so once you go through that assessment, you're eligible for that loan. So we have a whole finance department that works with people to take that form from that assessment, get approval through the program, and then points them towards a couple banks that they can go to and apply. And meanwhile, while all that's happening, internally we have teams that review for electrical loads, for somebody who double checks the design of the HVAC system with the manual J and manual Ds and manual S, and is preparing everything with the permit process going in. And so all of these things kind of get laid out leading up to the day of somebody's install. And so there are so many different teams, and even plumbing sometimes, if there's a gas disconnect or something like that, they're involved in that. And so everyone's kind of weighing in, everything kind of gets lined up internally. Customers frankly oblivious to most of this, that all this stuff is going on in the background. And then you get to the day of the install, and knock on wood, most of the time things go smoothly. Every once in a while, this is construction, surprises happen. It's okay, we're going to stop, or we're going to talk about what we just ran into. But depending on the scope, usually between 1 to 5 days, we're done with the project, and then the homeowner has a new system that they can be comfortable with. And our team then takes on rebates, and so we process rebates. We even take the rebates for the customers so they don't have to wait. So really, it's like an in-house solution. So the customer just has to say, okay, I want to do this, and then can kind of relax and enjoy it once it's installed.
That's amazing. And that is a lot of work. How do you manage all of that work internally? You mentioned you use OnCall Air, you use Conduit. What else do you use to help manage and run all of that?
Yeah,
Like,
that's a great question. I mean, it's hard. I think our current headcount is somewhere around like 83 people. It fluctuates a little bit on a weekly basis sometimes, but managing 83 people and electrical, a plumbing, and HVAC, a service, a weatherization, an audit, and a sales team. So it's 7 different teams that are essentially working, not including back office. It can be a lot. One piece of software that we're using is ServiceTitan. Really great. A lot of automation that you can build into that. A lot of connections that you can have back and forth. So like Conduit flows right into it. Chirrp also similarly kind of flows into it. And so we have all these connections. And so when somebody moves forward, projects get created, which then triggers all these tasks. And then we have team members who make sure, like, are the tasks getting checked off? If not, they're following up internally. We have Slack connected to that. So there are Slack channels for every customer. If you're one of our customers, you've got your own Slack channel, believe it or not. And so we're going through and kind of tracking that. And so there's a lot that kind of goes into that. Balls still get dropped here and there, but we try to do everything that we can to avoid it. But that working within ServiceTitan really helps control that. So you're essentially everything's flowing into one environment at the end of the day.
That is my greatest nightmare, having a Slack channel for every one of our customers. And like as a team of 83 and growing, you probably have just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of customers and hundreds of Slack channels. That is terrifying to me.
It, I will tell you, I have to be pretty strict about my days, and so email only gets looked at certain times of the day. Slack only gets looked at certain times of the day because otherwise it just becomes overwhelming. We're like, every 2 or 3 minutes, you're getting some sort of update or something like that, and you have to go through. Okay, what do I really need to look at here? What's going on? We have an awesome team, and so our COO is kind of doing the same thing, and she's keeping me very updated on what's going on. She's like, okay, we've got a problem over here, but I'm working with it. We have an operations manager doing the same thing, just with different departments and internal stuff, and so it's a lot to keep track of. But if you manage it, like, there's always a record, and that's what I love is that uh, Slack and Titan, they create like an accountability record internally where it's like, okay, did we actually do this or not? Did somebody call the customer? And even our phone system integrates with it. And so it's like, did somebody call the system? Yep, I can see the call. Oh, I can even listen to the call. I'm like, yep, here's what happened. Um, which is always a helpful thing when you get inevitably you'll get some customers. I've never heard from anybody from this company. It's like, oh, but I can see that Mike called you at 2 p.m. and it looks like you talked to him. Did we get the wrong person? And you have that kind of subtle, nice, you don't want to blame the customer, but it's like, yeah, pretty sure we talked to you conversation.
That's awesome. I'm still in shock about the Slack channels, but I think to your point, there's a record, and I think that's really powerful, because that's helping you ensure consistent service and that every box is checked on each one of those. Um, One of my questions for you is like, so we've talked a little bit about what helps internally. What helps, your helps you help your customers feel more confident and feel more taken care of externally. So when you're engaging with the customers, what parts of your tech stack are really important to have them involved in, so that they can see, how much work is going in. You're not going to add them to the Slack channel, but maybe
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Great question. A little bit of what I go back to what I said before with the terms of visualization, where I think, if we're talking about like Conduit, when you're early on in the process, being able to see what a head might look like on a wall, or what a vent in your ceiling might look like, you can visualize that, or even just the layout of your house. There are people who, believe it or not, have no concept of like how their house is laid out. And when you see it, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Yeah, I'm going to want more airflow here, and that's why, because it's a much bigger space than the rest of this. And it sounds intuitive, but sometimes it's not for customers. And then seeing the equipment. Next thing that's like really important. That's why I'm really like something like OnCall Air, because you can see what that outside condenser looks like, and we can get ahead of the things you never want to hear. Especially in heat pump world, sometimes you get what are called double stacked units, and they're kind of tall, and some homeowners freak out when they see them. And so when we switched over to OnCall Air, which is a little over 2 years ago now, we kind of killed off that problem, because customers could see it, and it's like, okay, you're getting this double stack unit. Here's what it is. It even has the dimensions on there, so there's no like, nobody told me that it's going to be this. So it's like, it's right there, and kind of killed off that problem. So that's an amazing part of it. After that, what we've started to find is that telling our story about what's going to happen next by video is kind of an interesting new emerging thing. I don't know if it's, people being ADD, or we've entered a stage where people just don't like to read things. We would find, like, even if we sent like a list of like, here's what's going to happen next, people generally wouldn't read that. And so what we've shifted to is a lot of kind of micro videos of, okay, you sign your contract, here's what happens next. And so like our COO taped a great video, and she explains like, okay, 1, 2, 3, here's what to expect next. Then 1, 2, 3 happens, and then a next video comes out. And so it's like micro bites of like, here's what's coming for you. And we're starting to redo them right now and involve other staff members. And part of the intent behind that too is to give customers a sense of like, yeah, you're going to see like 1 or 2 people at your house, but how many people are behind the scenes working on this? Like, people don't realize, and this is, the difference of when you work with a company like us versus some sole practitioners. If it's a sole practitioner, it's 1 or 2 people. In a truck, and not to say anything against their work, like some of them do outstanding work, they just don't have the infrastructure. And here you've got a finance department, you've got people on the phones, you've got a warehouse department, you've got people who are applying for your permits, and all of this is happening. And we've got a team of service people, so if there's a callback for any reason, they're out there that same day. So those are all the things, and we want you to kind of see and feel that, so you understand like, this is the investment you've made, and it is an investment. Because it's easy to forget sometimes, uh, for people in the HVAC industry, but homeowners, when they're purchasing or investing in an HVAC system, it's probably the second most expensive thing that they're going to do in their lifetime. Your home probably is the first, your home mortgage, all of that. But an HVAC system, other than maybe a car, is kind of up there in terms of price. And it's also something that most people really only do maybe 2 to 3 times in their lifetime. So it's not like a common thing that people are doing like every couple of years, unless they're moving a lot and going to a place that needs a kind of rehab. So letting people understand like, this is all the investment, and seeing that like, this is what you're investing in, this is what's supporting you and the choice that you made here, and the investment, that's really important.
I love that because I think this is something that I like. There is not a single amazing team we work with that is the cheapest in their market. And there's a
Right.
reason because really high quality results, whether it be an owner operator who's still doing a load calculation, their cost is going to be higher than somebody who isn't. And I think this is where homeowners need to see the value of everything you're doing. And the more you can make it more visual, the better off you are because you're just making your work more apparent to them. They now know what's going into it rather than thinking like, well, you just walked in here and you know what to do. It's one box goes in place of another box, and it's certainly not that. It's you walked through your solutions process earlier. There's many different options, and what's the best one for that homeowner is going to depend on that homeowner and that home. So that's super cool, and I love the approach to videos. I haven't heard of that before, but I think you're right, it's more custom, it's more enjoyable. And I even think about like one of our team members started sending me Loom videos explaining different things that she's doing. And I was like, this is better for me. Like, I would rather this than an email. Like, thank you for doing
Internally, we're shifting to Loom because it's so much easier to train people on than to write out a procedure document. Because the procedure document, again, I don't know if it's like an ADD thing or what it is, but people either skim it or don't read all of that, and they miss something. Whereas if you're doing a Loom, you can visualize it for people and kind of walk through like, okay, here's exactly what you're going to do. And we find that people frankly learn better. I wish I could replicate that for the field, with field text. But that's like the missing gap there, is we can't use the Loom quite the same way for the field text, but for administrative and office staff, like, it's awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, let's talk about a little bit about field techs and training folks.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you mentioned, you have a huge amount of technology you're working with. What have you found effective to train your team? I know different team members are using different tools. Your office team might be using Chirrp and ServiceTitan. Your sales or account management team may be using Conduit and OnCall Air and ServiceTitan. But what have you found effective when it comes to rolling out new technologies? Because that can be pretty daunting to many business owners out there.
Absolutely. When we're thinking about the field, we have some of the same. We have a lot of the same things in our tech stack that go to the field as the office. So, for example, like Slack, ServiceTitan are both very big in the field because the techs are communicating with the office through Slack. Again, it's kind of documenting like, okay, I walked Mrs. Jones through that. They're often uploading a form that they had the customer sign on site, saying, yep, I walked through. Yes, I've signed off on this. And so we're using that as a kind of back and forth deliverable there. In terms of training, there are a couple things that we turn to. So there's one app that's called Blue On that we use on the service side of things. And Blue On's great because in the service world, you have no idea what kind of system you're going to run into. It may be something that's new, it may be something that's old, it may be a brand that you're familiar with, it may be a brand that you're not. And Blue On makes it so that you can kind of hone in on what's going on with the specific model and brand really quickly. And so rather than having to spend 45 minutes Googling, okay, what is this model, and trying to find diagnostic tools and information for it, you can get to it pretty fast through the app. And we found that has been a huge time saver. It's not necessarily a training tool, but that's one. When it comes to training, we're really big on focusing in-house, and so we've started to build out like internal training so that people can be hands-on. One of the areas that we identified right around last summer that was a huge pain point, and we quickly built into our training facility, was low voltage wiring, which was just something where we were routinely having techs miswire things, and as a result, we would have callbacks that were just silly callbacks because something was cross-wired, and it's not doing damage to a system, but it's a non-necessary reason for a callback. And so we started putting everyone through that, and it's hands-on, and that's what my experience with folks from the field has been, that if we're going to do a training, the more hands-on that we can be, the better it's going to be received by them, or the more it's going to stick with them. And so that's one thing that we do. And then the other thing that we pretty routinely do is about once a month or so, we have somebody externally come in and do about a 2.5 hour training. And so we just had one maybe 2 weeks ago that was focused on energy recovery systems, ERVs. Uh, and part of the reason behind that is that there are some stretch code uh, policies that are coming into place this summer, which are likely to expand the applications of ERVs, and we're going to see more of them. And it's something that, normally we would see maybe two or three of them throughout the year. I have a feeling we're going to start to see two or three of them a month. And so we want people to be more comfortable with that. And so we had somebody come here. We always try to get people who can come with equipment that is portable, and folks can kind of get their hands on and get a sense of like, okay, what is this going to look like? Onboarding for us with new techs. It's important to us that any new tech comes through and they start to understand like the tech stack, because the last thing you want to do is like, okay, it's your first day, here are the keys, go out, good luck figuring out how to work your iPad, good luck figuring out how to use ServiceTitan, good luck figuring out how to use Slack, and all of these things. Like, it sounds silly, but you need to make sure that people know how to use them.
Yeah, this is, I think, where so many folks, when I talk to them, there's no point in buying a new technology if your team doesn't know how to use them. And I think the biggest challenge in the industry from technology provider perspective is making sure people are bought into the process of getting onboarded. And I think a lot of that requires just hands-on involvement and training. And it sounds like that's a core tenet to everything you do, which is why you've been able to adopt many different technologies into your platform and grow with them, which is awesome. Um, so when you think about like your advice to other teams out there, um, how do you like what would be your advice for those who are looking, those contractors that are looking to improve their service? And what tools do you recommend them starting to think about first? Like, how do you think about that layered approach?
Yeah. So generally, the advice I would give to other contractors, which is a mix of both kind of business advice, but also kind of getting into the tech aspect of it. The first part, and we kind of learned this a little bit the hard way over the last year. But growth is great, but you've got to have a good plan for it, because otherwise, like, it starts to affect quality and it starts to affect all sorts of other things. And so if you're growing fast and adding a bunch of new things, it gets messy really fast. And so I think it's having a plan both for the growth and kind of what that looks like, so that you maintain the quality and you maintain the reputation that you have. You don't want to impact that. But then also having a plan for, as you're rolling out kind of new technology, what's the rollout plan? What's the timeline? What are your real expectations? Because if you think you signed a contract and they're telling you you're going to be on board in 2 weeks and you're just going to hand it over to everyone and it's just going to magically work, I will tell you right now, you're really, really wrong. I wish it all worked that way, but my experience has been it almost never does. And so that's kind of a key piece to it. In terms of like the specifics of where would I start, I would start with some sort of CRM. And so that's, ServiceTitan. It could be, why am I blanking on the home advisor? I forget what
Call Pro maybe, or
yes, House Call Pro. Thank you. House Call Pro. It could be Salesforce. It could be whatever you want to do, but start somewhere with that, because that's where all of your data kind of comes to, and that becomes really important, because I think especially as we go forward with the automation, AI, all of that, the data that you have, and more importantly, how structured and clean that data is, starts to become more and more important. The next piece then, it kind of becomes, well, what are you looking to do? If you're looking to improve, for example, how you're designing things or make your sales more efficient or fast, something like Conduit's a great opportunity there, because instead of taking 90 minutes to measure every single room, you're scanning it in a much more efficient way. And so, especially if you're a smaller practitioner, what normally you'd be able to get maybe two homes in a day, all of a sudden maybe you're able to get three or four, and that actually makes a really big difference. Um, then after that, you start thinking about things like, how are we visualizing sales? And so that's, what platform are you presenting people a proposal on? If you're doing it by pen and paper, I can tell you that your competitors are presenting in a much more sophisticated way. Even if you're still presenting in something that's just text-based, like something that is trackable and lets you see, like, has a customer viewed this proposal? When did they last view that proposal? All of that's going to give you information about how serious is this customer, who do we want to target, to go after, who do we want to target for a rehash or inside sales. That's where you're going to get all that data from. And then you can start getting into things like Chirrp, which is, how do we get more sophisticated in how we work leads? Like, Chirrp is great for speed to lead. It's also great for customer follow-up. So if you've had a contract that's out there for 7, 14 days, whatever your policy is, that's where you start triggering some sort of campaign that's a rehash or inside sales campaign to try to reactivate that customer. That's my personal, like, if I were to go down a path of what I think the right trajectory is, that's probably how I would approach it.
I love it. And I agree, right? You need a foundation to store everything, and then you get to layer from there. Um, I guess my next two questions, and my last two questions, one of them is just what's one tool that you noticed a clear return on? And it sort of sounds like all of them, but I'm just thinking about like any examples that you have, where you were able to measure the impact before and after you implemented it. I'm just curious because it's always, I think it's not just the technology, right? It comes down to the use of it, which we've talked a little bit about, and the training of your team internally. But yeah, I'm curious if there's certain tools that were an easier lift or where you saw that clear impact right afterward.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think one tool, it sounds silly, but going back, we were laughing about it a little bit before. Slack, as weird as that sounds, we were using ServiceTitan without Slack probably for 4 or 5 months before we added Slack onto that stack. Overnight made a difference of how our team was communicating. And so that goes back to, like, a good team is a team that communicates and can kind of efficiently do that. Then I think it gets into, what are you tracking? What's giving you the feedback quickly? And so, you look at Conduit or you look at something like OnCall Air. What is that telling you? Well, it's telling you, has my salesperson gone out? Have they done this properly? Have they shown this to the customer? Because I have caught salespeople who, did you even go out to this customer? There's no Conduit. There is an on-call air, but there's no conduit. Why is there no conduit? Did you actually go out, or did we run this virtually? And you can catch people and stuff like that, and that creates accountability internally, and that's important to us. And you see results from that fast, because then you have a salesperson. Okay, I can't pull what I'm pulling here again, and again, I go back to, I guess I'm talking about my entire tech stack here, but you get to something like Chirrp. We even have campaigns where, a couple days after we've met with somebody, there's a ringless voicemail that goes out that sounds like it's from me, and I'm frankly kind of bumbling a little bit, so it sounds like it's semi-authentic. And we've had customers actually call back and be like, I love your company, but this person didn't get this to me fast enough, or this, can you help me with that? And that gives me like instant feedback. And I actually love getting calls back from those customers. The office will patch them right through to me, and I'll usually take them if I'm available, and talk to the customer. And you learn so much so fast. And that's just through a quick automation that, like, honestly, I recorded this thing a couple months ago, and it, just keeps going. And like I said, most customers don't realize that it's this pre-recorded thing, just the way that we did it, and that works really well.
That's so cool. And it's meaningful, right? Because they're hearing from you. They
Yeah.
are genuinely hearing from you. And I think it you can track the metrics on that. Um, okay. Last question for you. If you were to sort of summarize, like, how has technology helped you scale, take on more jobs, free up your techs for higher value work? I think that's I think such an important question, and would love just as the final one, your thoughts on that.
I think that without technology, you really can't scale in this industry anymore. You just can't. I think about, if we were doing what we are without the technology aspects, we would probably be staffed well over 100 people. And I just think about what the cost of that would be, and also just what the experience and the room for, frankly, human error. Like, people are humans, and stuff happens. And the result, though, sometimes is you get kind of mucky customer situations, which you want to avoid. And so I think we would certainly be less profitable. We probably would be going through a little bit more chaos on a daily basis than we want. And I don't think would be able to move as fast as we can. And one thing that we talk to our distributors a lot, and one of the distributors is, "Oh, how are calls looking right now? Right now, it's April in Massachusetts, which is very much shoulder season. Like, there's not a whole lot going on, because most customers don't actually have heat or cooling on. They're just kind of going with it, which is a tough time to sell. And our schedules are actually relatively full, and people are asking why, and we're starting to realize, like, they're full because of how we're automating and running the tech stack. And so, you think about that. I think that in 5 years, you're going to have two classes of people. You're going to have the companies that have adopted the technology that lets them move quickly. And then you're going to have the people who didn't want to take the time or the expense or whatever that is. And as a result, they just kind of get left behind.
I think that is a perfect way to end, because I people often ask me, well, like, if everyone has conduit, then what's the advantage? And it's like, well, now it's a requirement. It goes from being, did you at when you're an early adopter, you get the benefit of differentiating yourself, being the first in your market, you really stand out. Eventually you become the best user of it, and so that benefit accumulates over time. And then finally, at the end of it all, not only are you the best user of it, but you also, it's now a requirement. And I think that's true for all this technology stack. You're an early adopter of many of it. You'll be the best user of it for a long time, and that's what's going to set you apart in the long term.
I can tell you it's already happening. I mean, in Massachusetts, there are, particularly with the low income programs, CAP programs is what we call them in the state. There are certain requirements that, if you're not using something like Conduit, it becomes almost impossible to submit a bid for those programs. And so you need to jump onto the boat or not.
Love it. Jump onto the conduit boat. Um, Amazing. Well, Matt, thank you so much.